John Murphy. I'm in the alumni office at Hamilton College, where I work with a number of the talented people here on this call, faculty and staff alike. And I want to welcome you to this call. I hope you're well. I hope you're staying safe. We're happy to have you with us tonight for a virtual event, Saving Local Food Amidst the Global Pandemic. I'm really happy to see a range of alumni, parents, and other friends on the call, and I want to make a special point of welcoming some first-year students and their parents. We look forward to welcoming you to campus soon. A few notes before we get started. As I said, we've put everyone on mute for the moment. I want to encourage you to remain muted unless you have a question or comment to avoid background noise during the panel. Tonight's session is being recorded and it'll be available for a second listen on our website in a few days. You can use the chat feature to submit questions or comments as we go along, and the panelists will address them. Feel free to direct your questions individually or to the group of panelists. Now on to tonight's presentation, led by Hamilton professor Stephen Ellingson. Steve was appointed to Hamilton's faculty in 2004 and has served Hamilton in many capacities, including serving on and chairing the Honor Course Appeals Board, joining our Long-Range Planning Committee, directing the Levitt Center's Sustainability Program, and chairing his Department of Sociology now for the third time, I believe. It's tempting to enumerate Steve's many other accomplishments, but if I do that, we'll be here for a long time. So I'll skip to the present. Steve is currently working on a new book, Planting with Purpose, about the motivations, economics, and realities of the local food movement in rural communities such as ours. Tonight's panelists are among the many experts he's interviewed for his book, and I will let Steve introduce them. Steve?
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Let me give you a little background about how the project got started and what motivated us to hold a panel tonight. In 2004, I moved here from California, from Berkeley, in which every day was a farmer's market. And when we moved here, it was kind of a shock to our foodie sensibilities because there was very, very little local food that we could buy. There was no local food sections in the supermarkets, and the farmers markets were pretty small and underwhelming compared to those that we attended almost every day in Berkeley. And then about 08, 09, 2010, things really started changing. A lot more CSAs were popping up, some new cheese makers. We could find locally sourced meat of different types. And I had a student studying organic and local food one year as a senior fellow. And I didn't really know much about food. I'm an organizational and cultural sociologist. So I was reading about local food with her, and that really intrigued me. So I've been interviewing farmers and cheesemakers and bakers and retailers of different sorts in a multi-county area of central New York for the past 3 or 4 years. And I've started writing up my results. Unfortunately, the pandemic interrupted the final phase of data collection. So I'm hoping to hopefully finish up that this winter. But 3 things happened this spring that kind of prompted me to want to follow up about kind of the ways in which local food might be affected by the global pandemic. So I was interviewing someone in early May, and unasked, he ended the interview with a long, impassioned discussion about how local farmers might really go under or really suffer during the pandemic, and was very concerned that our local food system might not hold together. The second thing I noticed as a kind of a newsie is how many accounts I was hearing in the news, both of the fragility of our national food system, as well as about the ways in which local farmers were stepping in to meet demand. And so maybe that the pandemic actually might be a way of catalyzing greater involvement and expansion of the local food system. So I'm curious to find out if that might be the case. And finally, one of our panelists, actually early on in the quarantining, I think in March, actually did at least one YouTube walkthrough of a farm of one of his suppliers, and made this great appeal for all of his YouTube subscribers to support their local farmers. And so the goal for tonight is to really let you hear from people who work in local food, growing it, selling it, providing it, taking raw food and transforming it into beautiful meals for us. To hear from them how the pandemic may be affecting their businesses, and what they might think the future holds for local food in at least central New York. So tonight we're joined by three panelists, and these are listed in alphabetical order. First, Tim Hardiman, who is the executive chef and owner of Tailor the Cook, which was probably the first farm-to-table restaurant in Mohawk Valley, and maybe one of the first in central New York. And Tim could probably let us know if that's the case. The second panelist is Elizabeth Irons, who's the market manager for the Oneida County Public Market. And finally, Jason Townsend, who's the owner of Kingfisher Farm, which is a certified organic fruit and produce CSA. He's also a newly co-owner of Tom's Natural Foods here in Clinton, and he's a lecturer in environmental studies at the college. So thank you all three panelists for joining us. And again, audience members, if you have a question, feel free to type it into that Zoom chat bar, and we'll try to fill your questions in as we go along. You're also free to hold on towards the end and then ask away. So I thought I want to start by having you go back in time to when the pandemic first hit. And tell us about those first opening weeks of the pandemic, especially when the state decided we were going to close down. Can you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic affected your particular business, and how you responded to some of the things that were going on during that kind of the crisis or craziness of those, especially the March to April time period. Tim, could we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Steve, and thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for having me. It's funny, as you were saying that, I don't think, this has been such an all-encompassing period of time that every day seems like a completely new challenge. And I got to be honest, I haven't thought back about those first week or two in quite some time, because there's no time to think back, but that was a tremendously awkward and unknown time for a restaurant owner, any restaurant owner. The decisions were made for us, we went into kind of a cautionary mode on the weekend before. We knew what we were dealing with, and as a restaurant owner, we started to take extra precautions on that Thursday before. So I'm talking, I think it was probably March 9th or 8th or something. And we brought the staff together and really worked on some protocols for keeping our staff and patrons safe. And we made sure to let people know what we were doing. And we got through the weekend, real busy weekend for us. And, expected that we'd have to really tighten up the protocol as the weeks went on. And I guess it was Tuesday when Governor Cuomo shut us down. And, there's no playbook for that. There's no playbook for somebody shutting your restaurant down with freezers full. And for me, sourcing as locally as I do, at any given time, I've got 6 freezers full of between $8,000 and $12,000 worth of proteins. You know, it's not, I don't just order week by week. It doesn't work like that. When a farmer sends an animal to slaughter, you take what's available when it's available and you put it in the freezer. On top of that, you know, it certainly wasn't peak produce season, so I wasn't sitting on a lot of fantastic local produce at that time. But to be shut down like that is really something that you only can learn by doing. So I had my staff there all week. We went into kind of crisis aversion mode and started selling takeout, just as a means to an end, really, so that none of the prepped product, none of the product that, you know, so that we, to alleviate our losses, at least cut them. And so that's how we handled that first week. And by Friday, I had sold, and the amount of support we got was remarkable. We could have sold 10 times as much food as we did in a takeout fashion. And we shut the doors. We did not proceed right away with takeout as a lot of restaurants did. We shut down and took a few days to kind of understand what the next step was and really let the whole situation wash over us. So that was like the first week for us. And I think that Saturday was my first Saturday night with the restaurant closed in 8 years.
Ah. Thank you. Beth, like you were running winter markets at down, and what happened?
Well, of the three people that you have on the panel, thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be sitting next to a few people that I know work very hard every single day to deliver what they do. And they've both taught me a lot. Of the three of us, I was probably the one who was at risk of losing the least. I managed the market. I managed the market so people like Jason can come in and sell the product that they have on hand. I think if there's any positives to this situation, the positive was that it happened in March and not now, next month, when vendors or when farmers are out in the middle of their summer harvest with the bulk of their product, not being able to take it to market. That, I mean, this all hurts everybody, but that would have been that much more devastating. For me, it was, we were like Tim, we at Cooperative Extension kind of had a heads up that something was coming, something really big was coming. So we immediately started to consider what we could move forward with, what we couldn't move forward with. And the ultimate decision was basically that everybody had to put the brakes on everything till we started to figure out what this COVID animal was. So the first thing was we were in our winter season. We have 2 markets a month as opposed to 4 or 5. So we automatically canceled the March and April markets to give ourselves time to figure out what it was, how we were going to deal with it, how others were going to deal with it. Well, operating as in a kind of a quasi-governmental organization, Cornell Cooperative Extension, we had to wait for buyers up to make decisions, and they didn't know what they were dealing with either. At the same time, as we closed the market for 4 winter market sessions, we shut down 4 retail opportunities that our winter participating markets were now missing out on through no fault of their own. So we did what most people were doing, and it's a word that was started to use a lot. We pivoted. And we worked with the vendors who were turning towards their online sales. We're partnering with other vendors. If they didn't have their own online sales platform, they were partnering with other farmers who did have platforms that they could offer their products through. The train station where we normally have the market, inside and outside, initially was kind of like viewed like a COVID-19 petri dish with travelers coming in and out. Amtrak did not stop. Bernie Bus did not stop. Everything else did, but those didn't. So we didn't want to risk the health of our vendors who were there with every market and the consumers that came in to support them. So we shut it down. We relocated. We created what we called a safe space at Cooperative Extension out in the parking lot. There were designated pickup points. that illustrated the 6-foot distancing. You know, we wrote up protocols for the vendors to follow. We wrote up protocols for the customers that they would receive when they placed the orders online with the various vendors. And we set it up. I was out there every Friday for 2 months, set it up, kept it up for Saturday pickups like a normal market day. We try to keep. One of the things that I was really conscious about was trying to maintain some comfort level that people already had with the public market, that trust that we had been building up over the past 9 years with the market itself and with the individual vendors. We wanted to try and support that and sustain that as much as we could, given we all got thrown into the deep end of the pool and nobody was knowing how to swim just yet. So we set that up. The first couple of weeks, again, it was new, it was scary, it was different, it was kind of rammed down everybody's throat. This is how we're going to do it for the time being. But then it started to pick up, and we started to get vendors that were using it as a safe site to drop off and pick up pre-purchased produce and product. So it worked. Over an 8-week course, it worked. Not every vendor took advantage of it. Not every vendor needed to. A number of our vendors have online farm stores that they just simply opened at a time of the year that they normally wouldn't have. And the people came out to the farm to buy the product. We just got the word out. We shared everything on our social media. So-and-so is having a special on their farm store with this product, or so-and-so's farm store is open on that day for that product. So we just tried to communicate as much as we possibly could. The market serves as a host for the local farmers and the producers. So I just went to virtual mode, and we continued to do that until we were able to open on May 16th in our regular summer season. So a lot of them came back, so we did what we could, and they're still here. So we like to think that, you know, like, and it's overused, but together we'll get through it, and that's what we did. And it also gave birth to some ideas that are probably going to stick around long after we get COVID under control, just because it worked.
Yeah, hey, I'm Jason Townsend, and I just thanks so much for expressing this interest in local foods, everything that John and Steve have done at the top to organize this, and then everyone showing up tonight. In reflecting back for me as a grower on those early days of COVID, at that point in the season, I'm into just storage crops and looking to basically sell them at Beth's Market, at the train station market. And it turns out I didn't need to. I mean, as soon as COVID hit, the phone started ringing and the emails filled up and people just bought out everything I had. So all the potatoes, carrots, beets that I store and that people normally would have been buying on a weekly basis through the winter went in bulk to people. And then I was done. So I was done selling, and lots of people reached out to try to get product after that, and I didn't have it. And I think a bunch of us locally would have loved to have had more product, but it's just a tough time of year. Not a whole lot of us push the season and try to do, say, heated greenhouses or a whole lot of winter growing, mainly due to Lake Ontario. I mean, we just get so much cloud cover right through the Mohawk Valley here. There's stuff you could do in the Hudson Valley that you can't do here in the Mohawk Valley for lack of winter sunshine. So that's just to say that I was basically shut down and just went into typical winter planning mode, sketching out crop rotations, making seed orders, pruning the orchard, and kind of barreling ahead with the full farm plan as it would be in any other year. And I had some trepidation about doing that. Would there be markets for the stuff that we grow? You know, would people be so isolated in their homes they couldn't pick up a CSA box? Would we have summer markets? All those type questions. But I just decided, you know, to barrel ahead with a typical farm plan and grow as much as I normally would have. And sitting here in July, I'm very glad that I did. And in fact, we probably would have liked to have pushed it a little bit more. We'd like to have a little bit more product right now because demand is quite high. I don't want to jump ahead, maybe, Steve, to some of your future questions, but I would just say one observation is that people have come out of the woodwork with interest in CSA locally, which has been a wonderful thing for my marketing plan. And I know for Asher and Wendy at Common Thread, for Nancy and Pete and Nancy Morelli at Old Path Farm, we all have waiting lists for our CSAs. We've all maxed out our CSAs. I doubled my CSA. And I mean, people were coming out of nowhere. I have people coming down from Barneveld. I have people coming down from Rome. Prior to that, I was a very local Sequoia, New Hartford, Clinton based CSA, some Utica. And now I have people from all over the place. So that's been a real bonus of a silver lining to, I think, how it's encouraged people to think about the food system and to appreciate what CSA is. And I could go on and on about CSA, but maybe that's another line of questioning. From the market end, you know, Beth has done a great job with that Oneida County Public Market. We've also got a Tuesday market in New Hartford. We've got a Thursday market in Clinton. So 3 really excellent farmers markets for this area. I would just want to plug all 3 of those to everyone who's listening. That's 3 days a week where you can pop in and get local everything, you know, maple syrup, honey, meats, vegetables, fruits. You know, even Ithaca doesn't have that. So just to say that I think that the availability of local food is here. Often people don't realize it. And I would have to say that the markets are off as a result of COVID. We're starting to see an uptick, but although CSA has jumped up, markets have squeezed down. And I think it's just largely there's still a number of people who aren't leaving the house, and for good reason. You know, and everyone's got to make their own personal decisions about COVID risk. But there are numbers of faces that I would see at every single market in previous years that I have not seen once this year.
Thank you, Jason. And you just jumped right into kind of the next few questions, but all of 3 of you are really tied into different networks of producers, growers. And I wonder if what some of those conversations were early on in the pandemic. I know, Tim, you did a couple of virtual dinners with some folks in Syracuse, one of them. What were you hearing from your colleagues in the field? You got some war stories that you could share? How did you all come together? And one of the things I've heard a lot in the interviews I've done is just how cooperative the local food system members are. That you work together, you don't see yourselves as competitors, but as colleagues. And I wonder if the pandemic is one of those things that really helped even further cement some of those kind of collegial relationships among different chefs and farmers and market managers and that kind of thing. So any one of you could jump right in.
Well, I'm unmuted. I don't know how that happened, but so I'll take it. The first conversation I had was with Susie Jones at Jones Family Farm. Probably one of my strongest vendor relationships. Susie and Peter have been, they've become much more than farmers to me. They're friends. And I was buying from them, you know, long before we opened the Tailor and the Cook. And I know just how tied to restaurants they are. You know, a lot of farms, be it produce farms, are doing what Jason has touched on, CSA business and you know, direct to the consumer business via the farmers market, or but there are a good deal of farms who deal pretty exclusively with restaurants. So when I finally got my head out of my rear end, so to speak, after a couple of days of, you know, deciding whether or not my business was going to, how I was going to proceed, the first call I made was to Susie. And yeah, every fear that I had for them was was reinforced in the conversations. You know, she was down 90% in a week. And those sort of numbers, you know, I was down 100% in a week, so I wasn't far behind her. And I knew immediately that I had to do something on at least Peter and Susie's behalf. And I had hoped to take it a little bit farther, and then, you know, things were just changing by day. So I did, as you kind of alluded to, Steve, I went up to the farm, stayed plenty away from everybody, and just did a little YouTube live, a Facebook live, and just talked about the fact that the Joneses were there and they had a farm stand, and just kind of soapboxed for a few minutes about what really ended up being what I saw the direction for how people looked at where they were getting their food in that time. And I don't know, as Peter and Susie, for example, really recouped, you know, and made it back up to, you know, what their par levels would be, and I'm not going to take any amount of credit for me going there and doing that Facebook Live, but I think a lot of farmers rebounded within 2 or 3 weeks, and people were, you know, you saw what was happening at the grocery store. That's what I asked people to do with our local farmers. If you're going to Hannaford and panic buying, well, go to the Jones family farm and panic buy, you know, fill your freezer with food that you can trust. And I think people really started doing it. And it wasn't just, you know, like Jason said, he sold out of those storage crops early on because people didn't know. People were afraid. It was that toilet paper effect, you know, that, and if you talk to people right now, they got freezers full of food. You know, we were, the shelves didn't run dry, so to speak, but we did see some real gaps in the national food system. But I don't think we saw those gaps per se in the local food system. And I think that's one of the real reasons to focus in on our food economy, is that those gaps that we're seeing on a national level as a result of shutdowns or trucking or whatever the you know, insert hurdle here, when you dial it in and talk about your friends and neighbors who are your producers, those hurdles are a lot easier to overcome. And I don't think that farms benefited from this by any means, but like Jason said, CSAs this is the year of the CSA, and people had time to meditate on where their food came from and how they sourced it. And I think that might be a silver lining to all of this, is to understand that the local food economy has a lot less variables in it than the national food economy. And you know, that doesn't say much about my business. And I did do some interesting things while we were shut down. I did some virtual dinners where we prepared the food at the restaurant, and it was either delivered or picked up. And then everybody logged on to a Zoom meeting like this. Actually, I used a different platform from our local telecom provider, but very similar to Zoom. And we got together, and I was here in my home, and everybody pulled out the food that I had half prepared, and I showed them how to reheat it. And then we sat down, and we had, I also supplied New York State wine. And we ate and we drank together. And the idea was, I mean, I needed some cash flow. I wanted to keep myself in front of people. I wanted to talk about what was going on. And I, like probably everyone here, was just hungry for some interaction with people other than my 3-year-old, 10-year-old, and my wife. And because we hunkered down, like I'm sure all of you did in those first few months. Those virtual dinners ended up being remarkably special. Maybe it had something to do with the 3 bottles of wine that were offered out with the meal, but it really was. There is a way to connect virtually and have it be a human emotional experience. And so I think I did 3 of those, and they were good. they were good, and people were really happy about it. And of course, now I've turned my attention to reopening the restaurant, but I'll let you in on a little secret. I don't intend to let that virtual concept go. I think, and we'll probably touch on this later, but I'll sign off on this question by saying my cash flow isn't what it used to be, that's for sure. And so a restaurateur or a businessman cannot sit back on their laurels and hope for the business to roll in the door and save the day. So I'm thinking about all sorts of different things and maybe taking some bits and pieces from what I did during the shutdown to hopefully continue a sustainable business model.
Thank you, Tim. Beth, I wonder if what you were hearing from farmers, it sounded like the move to online vending and kind of you played a role matching people who may not have had those capabilities with others, but were the farmers that you that have been selling at the Oneida County Market, were they struggling? Have they, are they coming back? Are people losing the farm? What are you hearing?
Jason could probably speak better to that than I could, but from my perspective, there was, like, you know, Tim referred to, there was an initial panic, but farmers and food producers are a really tough group of people, and we're all dealing with COVID, but they deal with Mother Nature every single year, and they plan down on paper, and they're going to put the seed in the ground at a certain time, and it's going to get water, and it's going to get sun, and it's going to get temperatures that it needs to grow. And when they, like this spring is a perfect example, we had freezing temperatures in May. We had farmers that couldn't get out into a field until 2 to 4 weeks after they were scheduled to be out there, just to turn the soil to get it ready to take seed. So they're a really, really good group of thinking on their feet and doing what needs to be done to achieve the final objective, which is to raise the produce that they sell at the farmers markets and other retail spots and restaurants like Tim's. And, you know, there's a lot of factors that they deal with every day just through the course of doing what they do. It's my job as the market manager to make the Oneida County Public Market is always a place that they want to be part of, to feature what they work so hard to bring to the table every week. And when things like COVID happen, it's my time to step up and support them for whatever they need support for, whether that's creating a safe place for them to get their products to a customer that's already paid for it. We are going to be directing some grant funds. We were awarded a USDA grant at the end of last year. We're going to be building an online platform for the farmers market. So vendors participating in the market who either want to augment what they already sell on their own platform, or maybe haven't had the ability or the funding or the time to set up their own platform, they'll be able to participate and sell their products through an online farmers market right at the public market. The products will be ordered directly from them. We are hopefully going to be setting up a software platform or a software program that will actually, when the customer purchases their product, that money goes right to their designated account. There's, you know, it cuts way down on the accounting. The public market just wants to be the place where people come and pick up purchases that they've already made with the farmers. We don't want to have to be part of the financial transaction. If the consumer can go directly to the producer or the farmer with their funds, that's exactly what we want to see happen, because that's ultimately our goal. At the end of every market session, I want if the farmer takes a half an hour to set up when they come into the market, I want them to take 5 minutes to break down because they sold out. I want the heaviest thing that they put in their vehicle to be their cash box, not product that didn't sell. So that's my job. Like I said, I've learned a lot from both Tim and Jason and a lot of other farmers and producers that I've been in contact with through my relationship with both of these people, that you just pivot. You just think, okay, here's the problem, where's the solution? And everybody comes together. If you can't do it on your own, there's always somebody that's got a piece of the puzzle that you're missing. But that's just, Tim talked about silver linings. I think I was thinking about CSAs when Jason mentioned it. I know multiple farmers who We do CSA fairs in February, so farmers have an opportunity to focus on what they have left to sell for their season. When this hit, they were doubling and tripling the amount of CSA shares that they were having made available because people were looking for it. This, I think, in a very scary way, is forcing people to realize that the food system isn't what's in the cooler at Walmart. The food system is so much more than what's at the grocery store. And don't panic if it's not there. Sometimes you might have to look a little harder for it, and it may not be quite as convenient, but it's always worth the effort. And you're supporting your community members. You're investing your food dollars locally, which benefits everybody.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Beth.
just to
Oh,
just
and
to
just a
piggyback.
note,
Go ahead,
just a
Beth.
note, I did not pay Jason to speak nice about the market earlier, but I do appreciate it.
Well, just to piggyback on what Beth was saying, growing vegetables, raising meat, being in dairy are all marginal enterprises financially. The mean salary of farmers, whatever level you're in New York, is $50,000. That's what an average family keeps. Some of these dairy farms might run over $1 million through the business to keep 50,000. You know, it's that bad. With more high value crops like what I grow and what Common Thread grows, what Old Path grows, we can keep, you know, in that range with a smaller gross. But it's just a very difficult way to make money farming. Most of us do it out of a passion for local foods because we like being around plants all day, because you know, we like putting a quality product out there that people appreciate. That said, I think the dread among the farmers around here leading up to COVID, before anyone knew the word COVID, was that people weren't signing up enough for CSAs. None of us were hitting our targets, or we'd struggle to get that last share that, you know, made our target share, and it would happen in June, you know, and have to be prorated, and you know, that kind of a thing after the CSA had started. And so we've all been on cloud nine to have had the outpouring of interest in CSA. And I do have to say that one common theme I've heard from people who've signed up for CSA is, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I've thought about joining a CSA for 3 or 4 years, and I never pulled the trigger. And this year, people are finally jumping in. And that's just been wonderful for all of us who can really build a pretty solid marketing plan and financial base off of CSA income. It's just a fantastic way to do business as a farmer with that guaranteed income, with checks rolling in March and April before the crops are really even harvestable. It's a great way to go. So that's been a fantastic thing. Now, the other fear that we all share is that the folks who I'm saying came out of the woodwork, who are trying it for the first time, would be somehow disappointed, because in a CSA box, you can sometimes get more of something than you really know how to use, or a product that you've never touched before. Kohlrabi or fennel jump to mind, you know, some oddities. However, I have to say that my inbox fills up all the time with really appreciative comments from the CSA members that I have, that has changed their perspective on local foods, that it's been delightful, that it's fresher produce than they've ever had in their life, or that it reminds them of eating straight out of their grandparents' garden, you know, when they were kids. So those have all been fantastic things that I hope speak to what will lead into a growing trend in the area, growing you know, appreciation and desire to be part of these CSAs, because markets are fickle. You know, I mean, we had rain last Saturday in Utica, and we still had a good market, and we had more people through the door than we have. And that speaks to, I think, people becoming more comfortable with COVID. But it's just the kind of thing where you pick it all the day before, whatever the weather's going to be Saturday, and away you go. Either people come or don't, and you can win or lose, and you never know. It's a crapshoot each market. Whereas CSA is really a comforting, guaranteed security blanket for all of us who take that marketing approach. And to get back to your original question, Stephen, I'll just stop after this, is we all do collaborate quite a bit. You know, I'm in constant contact with Nancy Grove at Old Path Farm, regular contact with Asher at Common Thread, just, you know, feeling out what's happening in the area as far as a marketing plan and the kind of response we're getting from our customers, in addition to, you know, getting together to discuss weather and how crops are doing. We also share orders of fertilizer, we share orders of compost, we share orders of plastics for the greenhouse. So we're very collaborative here. We don't view each other as competitors really at all, and we do everything we can to support each other, because there's how many people in Oneida County? You know, it's 500,000 people, and there's just a few of us small scale organic type farms. You know, bring it on. We want more customers. We want more people racing out to the Saturday markets, and more people signing up for CSA.
Thank you, Jason. You've already started answering kind of my third question, which is really about, now that we're several months into this, the growing season, we're hitting towards the peak of the growing season, at least for things like zucchini and tomatoes and raspberries. But I'm wondering about, and you've already mentioned a little bit, especially Beth, about reopening the market and people coming back. But how is social distancing affecting your restaurant or the market? Or when you go to the market, have you found yourself having to kind of police the social distancing thing and kind of remind folks about that and being safe while still supporting local food?
You want to take that first, Beth?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have, anybody who does anything with the public has had to kind of wrestle with how they're going to institute the the guidance rules, which everybody knows are kind of like mandatory at this point, and still create that comfort zone, that comfort level that your customer needs to be able to access your business, and spend some time there and spend some money there. So again, right out of the gate, you know, there was 10 rules. Masks had to be, were required within the market space, social distancing. And we went around and I drew chalk lines like a crazy person the first couple of markets we were open. I could pace out 6 feet in my sleep. There was even 6-foot social distancing between the vendor setups. So I didn't have as many outside vendor booths. And I wasn't able to have all the vendors back initially. I was only allowed to have the farmers and the food producers, which again, the idea of having a farmer's market is you create this wonderful little micro community. It just kind of pops up in a beloved community space on a certain day of the week for a certain number of hours. And that community, that civic pride that little space creates in that time span pulls people in. And when they get there, you can buy this great food and you can buy these artisan products and you can buy things you can't find anywhere else, but you got to come down and you got to do it because we're only here for 4 hours or 6 hours. And then a half an hour after the Oneida County Public Market shuts down, you never knew there were 30 vendors and 200 people in the space 45 minutes before that. But that's kind of like the magic of farmers markets. COVID demanded that we do the exact opposite of that. We couldn't have all the vendors back. We had to control the traffic. Initially, we had one point of entrance, one point of exit. I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning, hauling out corralled barricades and locking them all together and fixing up spaces where people can come in and people can come out. One-way traffic. We had to minimize the opportunity for people to congregate or linger. So picnic tables had to be pulled out. We couldn't have ready-to-eat food vendors. we were encouraging people to not spend time at the market. Come in, one person per household, no kids, no pets, 6-foot social distancing, had to wear a mask, one-way traffic. Please come in, buy what you need from your farmers and leave. And as the general public, as the world kind of got comfortable with doing those things, and we did those things long enough that we didn't see spikes, at least in our state, in our particular area, we were able to kind of back off some of those. Now we are pretty close. We still have some rules in place, and those rules are going to be here for the foreseeable future. You still have to have a mask on when you come into the market space. We still have barricades up at each end of the parking lot, but we have entrance and exit at both ends of the parking lot, so accessibility is a little easier. We don't have one-way traffic. When a person comes in, we have people at each end of the parking lot. They're greeted. Thank you for wearing your mask for us today. Please remember social distancing while you're in the market, and come in and please support your favorite farmer. The children are back. We were able to restart our children's program, which was a great traffic driver for our market. And surprisingly enough, this past Saturday, I was able to remove the no pets rule, which I had no idea people were really negatively impacted by not bringing the four-legged family members into the market. That created another uptick in attendance. So we're getting a little by little, because we're paying attention to the things that are being recommended that we pay attention to, and we're respecting each other's spaces, we're able to kind of inch back towards the Oneida County Public Market that everybody has come to love and support over the past 9 years, which I think is what, and Tim alluded this to before, that's what everybody's looking for. Look, we're going to live with COVID. It's not going away ever. We'll just figure out how to live with it, like we did with the flu and AIDS and everything else. It just happened really abruptly and in a really scary way this time. But I think people are really looking for those things that they draw comfort from. And we're lucky enough to know that the public market is one of those things. Going to Tailor the Cook for dinner is another one of those things. As soon as he opened up again, my husband and I had a reservation the first night, because everybody's craving those comforts, those things that they looked forward to, that they really truly enjoyed. They want those things back, but we just have to be smart about how we offer them and how we present them. And especially with food. I mean, there are so many, even in a good world without COVID, ask Tim, every day of the week, food safety is #1 on the list. He will not let anything come out of that restaurant kitchen that he doesn't firmly believe in, and he will put his reputation behind every plate that comes through that window. And we need to have people like that, but we have to make sure that we pay attention to all the rules. And that goes from the time somebody like Jason puts a seed in the ground to plant, to grow something, to the moment Tim puts something like that on the plate for someone to sit down and eat. I'm just a link in that chain. But we've been able to manage things to the point where we're respectful. We have to respect COVID at this point. Again, this is an animal that we don't know how it behaves yet, but we can't let it rob us of everything that we crave and that we need to make ourselves comfortable just to live our lives.
Thank you.
Well said, Beth.
I don't know if I answered the question, but you know.
No, but that's okay. It probably wasn't. It was a long-winded question. Tim, I know that you've just reopened. I mean, maybe briefly, you can talk a little bit about that process. And then I know that there have been a number of questions about what you all think about the future, what this might hold. And I want to make sure that we get to that before we end.
Yeah, we have just reopened the Tailor the Cook. We finished up 3 weeks of being open, and to say it is a challenge to operate in this climate is a pretty extreme understatement. The way we are forced to operate is completely counterintuitive to everything that is hospitality and is a fine dining experience. You know, we are most definitely a locally sourced farm to table restaurant, but we also serve the, you know, a fine dining atmosphere, and it's such a challenge. It's incredibly discouraging, but it's the only way we can proceed. You know, we have to make sure that our staff and our guests are safe and comfortable. And I think the comfort level is really, you know, Beth mentioned that a couple times. It's really what we're struggling with is there is a great deal of people that are not comfortable yet to come out and dine, and that's okay. We have outdoor dining as well as indoor dining. And even on our busiest night this last Saturday, is about 40% of a standard Saturday night. And that was our busiest night yet since we've reopened. I'm so thankful for the people that are ready to be out and dining, because I need those people. Takeout has been a portion of it. We have tried to kind of pivot our menu a little bit so that we could be a little more takeout friendly. People don't generally think of the Tailor and the Cook as an option for takeout. They think of it as an experience for a special event for their dinner. And so our new menu concept kind of focuses around small plates and a little bit more casual of a menu concept, and is hopefully allowing our guests to maybe consider us for some takeout. I fully understand the level of comfort or lack thereof comfort. I hope that it gets better, but I understand that it's much bigger than just filling the seats at my restaurant. And I don't want to be a party to it, you know, ever being anything other than doing what's right in the face of this pandemic. But there are days where I'd be better off closed from a financial standpoint. And I don't want to seem doom and gloom about it, because I'm damn happy to be open, and I'm damn happy to have my team back and to be buying again from the farmers. But it's more financially challenging for me today than it was when we opened the restaurant 9 years ago. We're in more precarious waters than we were then, which is crazy to think. But you know, that's not anyone who's listening's fault. It's my cross to bear right now, and pivoting and deciding what else can be done to keep the model sustainable is how I have to look at it. You know, I'm thankful that we're allowed to be open and serve the awesome food and work with the farmers again. And now I've got to figure out what it looks like going forward, because it's going to be a long, long time before I'm able to operate at 100% capacity and to do what we used to do, if ever. So there's got to be, you know, people in hospitality and the restaurant industry have to learn how to recreate the wheel and figure out how to supplement the income that we've lost. And I don't have much more to say on that, because I'm not really sure. I'm working on it.
Thanks, Tim. We should probably get wrapping up here. I see it's nearly 8. There are several people have posted questions about, is this going to be a short-term little upward trend of supporting local food and the CSAs? Is this a moment when we can pivot to actually having a much more vibrant, viable local food system? Ideas about how do we maintain the momentum that you've been describing? Any and all of you are welcome to jump in.
I think Jason and Beth can probably speak most eloquently to that, but let me say one thing. If this isn't the springboard to people paying more attention to their local food economy, then there isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. I really think this is really going to be, this is our opportunity to educate people about the food systems. I mean, up until I started managing a farmer's market, food and system were two totally unrelated words in my vocabulary. Now they're routine, and a lot of people don't recognize that and don't realize what that means. This is an ideal opportunity for us, and by us, I mean everybody who is in a food industry, whether you're growing it, processing it, cooking it, or eating it. This is an opportunity for us to educate ourselves and each other that food, again, and I hate to beat this drum, but food isn't just at Walmart and the Hannafords and the Price Choppers. It is, you know, when I live just outside of Holland Patton, which I'm sure a lot of people on this call may not realize where that is, but in Oneida County, agriculture is the #1 industry, dairy being the largest part of that. But you can't drive very far in any direction in Oneida County without passing something that screams agriculture: a cornfield, a wheat field, a soybean field, a herd of cows, somebody riding a tractor, a barn, horses, goats, alpaca, sheep, everything. Agriculture is where it's at and in this county, and we're very good at it on multiple levels. It's just important. It's the responsibility is on us now to see this as an opportunity that our consumers understand that, and they understand how close they are to it. Because a cooler or a freezer section in Walmart is empty doesn't mean that product is out of reach. You just have to reach in a different direction for it. And it's up to us to educate those people what direction that is. And I see that as a big part of my job as a manager. I have anywhere from 20 to 40 vendors on any Saturday on any month of the year. And it's my job to make sure that the people who are thinking about coming to the market on a Saturday morning know what they're going to see when they get here, and know that it's worth the trip to get here. And we really need to take advantage of that opportunity. And it's a drum that we can't stop beating. It may not be as loud as it is right now, but I think it's going to be louder than it was before COVID, because I think this is getting people's attention, whether it's through panic or, like Jason said, someone that came up to him and said, you know, I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. This is like, and again, like Tim just said, if this isn't a flag that says, now's the time to start doing this, there isn't one that we're going to pay attention to. So going forward, a lot of us are going to be doing things a lot differently. And it's going to be kind of a combination of different things. We're going to be throwing out a wider net, but having closer conversations, because that's what's going to convince people to not drive 50 miles to go to the Wegmans in Syracuse to get something, but just go to the farmer's market on a Saturday or a Thursday or you know, if you're going up north on vacation, stop in Old Forge. They got a great farmer's market on Friday afternoons in Old Forge. Good food is close. You will literally drive right by it every day. And it's our job to make sure that people don't forget that.
Yeah, I think, you know, second everything Beth just said. And Beth, Natalie, and the New Hartford market manager, and Jackie, the Clinton market manager, all three have been working well together to really get the word out and doing everything they possibly can. And from a grower perspective, just appreciate that so much. I would say that as a local grower, we're guardedly optimistic. It's sort of like looking at that tomato crop. It's still green. It hasn't quite ripened, and anything can happen in the meantime. All of us are a little worried that this is just flash in the pan kind of thing. The extreme interest in local foods. Truly hope that it's not. You know, and like I say, the factor that makes me think that this could stick is that once you try this food, you tend not to go back. That's one thing I've noticed. You know, once you get a taste of what it is to have something grown in these local soils, picked within 24 hours, and then popped right onto your plate, there's no better eating. You know, you can't beat it. So once people try that, I don't think they're going to want to go back to, you know, 3,000-mile traveled lettuce from California that's sat in a cooler for a couple days at the Hannaford. So, you know, we're guardedly optimistic. It's markets, I would say, are about 2/3 of what they were. And I think that's just people getting used to getting back out and trusting that the markets do have a good COVID safety protocol. But I think as we get into later July and August, people are really going to start to come out to the markets.
Yeah.
And I'm just hopeful that people will continue with their enthusiasm for CSA. And just one other tiny point is that Blue Apron and those kind of customized boxes coming from national companies are competition for CSA, but they're not CSA. And so, you know, Common Thread, Old Path, and myself really try to toe the line with the core concept of CSA, which is a share in our farm. You know, you join and you're part of the farm. You're going to hear every detail via email updates and conversations, all the ups and downs of the farm, and you really do become a part of it, in addition to all that great food that comes your way.
Thank you. So audience members, now would be a time if you have a particular question for any and all of the panelists, unmute yourself and ask away. We have a few more minutes.
Nobody wants to hop in on that, Steve.
Well, you know, Hamilton alumni.
Oh, there's somebody.
Hey there. So I'm going to jump in, and actually I'm going to repeat a question that Sharon Rippey posted in the chat, because I think it's a really intriguing one. And she puts it as, is there any advice or suggestions for young people that are on this call that might have an interest in getting into farming and maybe creating a CSA? And I'll just maybe broaden that question and say, what do you think about this community for people who are in their 20s just starting? What advice would you give them? How would you welcome them?
I could take a stab at that. I have several young people between 20 and 30 something who work for me on a regular basis. Many of them are just happy to be outside, have an outdoor job, get their first taste of what it is to grow food, the hard work that goes into that. A couple of them have their own aspirations to have their own farm someday. And so absolutely working for any local farm is a great training program for moving ahead. And there are opportunities at my farm. There are opportunities at Common Thread right down in Hamilton. I've mentioned that farm a couple times. They're a farm just half hour south of us in Hamilton, one of the largest CSAs in the area. And there are opportunities at Old Path Farm, which is also just my farm and Old Path are 20 minutes from Hamilton College and Clinton. So anyone based in this area, absolutely feel free to reach out to myself at Kingfisher Farm. You could look all my details up online. And I could also put you in touch with Old Path Farm for opportunities to try this out. It's a daunting task to start your own farm. And anyone who works with me who wants to do that, the two bits of advice I have are work for a bunch of farmers first and really get your skills in line before you attempt this. And then have some capital. You're going to need $50,000 to start a farm minimum, and then you want to have some cash flow pretty quickly after that.
Thank you.
You know, I can hop in quick on that. I'm not a farmer, but I am acutely aware of what a farmer goes through, and the only person. There's only one other job that works close to as hard as a farmer, but not quite as hard, and that's a cook. And I'm not quick to really invite youth into the hospitality industry until I see that they really, truly have a passion for it, because it's a hell of a way of life. I love it. It's all I know. It's my life's work, but it's there are days where I say, boy, should have gotten into IT or something like that. But I'm not quick to invite people into hospitality. If they show the interest, if they have the drive and the passion, I will most certainly incubate and educate and do all I can. But I do not, I don't walk around talking about how it's the best job in town, because I don't want to paint that picture. I don't want to make it seem like it's not as hard as it is. And like, you know, Jason talked about earlier, you know, farming and cooking are not ways to get rich. They are ways to express what you do. there's a lot of people who will poo-poo Central New York and Utica for a lot of different reasons. And there's a lot of graduates from Hamilton and many other colleges that hit the ground running as soon as graduation day is over. But lots of that stuff has changed around here, and this is a pretty viable economic climate to open a business in. And yeah, you're gonna need twice what Jason talked about to open a restaurant in any market. But I love seeing graduates sticking around. I love seeing people you know, taking root here and working to you know, make Central New York their home.
I have another question. Can you talk about more about what the state has been doing or not doing to help support farms and local businesses related to food? I know that there was that initiative to buy from upstate to bring to downstate, but I'd love to hear on a more personal level how that has been going.
Can I
For
just say
myself-
thank you? Wait, that's my
sorry, Steve.
former student, Susan. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
I have not gotten a tremendous amount of support. I'm not saying this in a negative way from the state per se over COVID-related issues. But I do believe there's been some funneled through Beth that have supported her initiatives, which have benefited myself as a local grower and the many other people who sell their wares at the Oneida County Public Market.
Yeah, there's, for a while, it just seemed like all they did in Albany and Washington was just pump out aid programs. And for a while there were so many programs flying around. The agricultural team at CCE, we were meeting twice a week just to try and figure out, trying to keep track of this grant program and that loan program and this qualifying program and this paperwork and that paperwork. And it got very jumbled. There are a number of things out there, and now that the dust is settling a little bit on the situation, they're coming up with, you know, all these plans and all these proposals. Food safety, again, it always rises to the top as the #1 thing, regardless of what you're growing or how you handle it or where you sell it. It's got to be safe to eat when it gets to somebody's dinner plate. So there's a lot of programs that have kind of been thrown together. I don't think we'll see a lot of them perpetuate for a long period of time, just because they were thrown together so quickly, and some of them in times where we didn't know as much then as we know now, and they just won't be appropriate. There's one that Tim, you may want to speak to this. I don't know if you tried to take advantage of that PPP program, that payroll protection program, that wasn't just for agricultural businesses, but for all businesses. And it was the federal government. It was one of the federal government's ways of helping businesses maintain their employees. So they wouldn't be dumped into the pool of rapidly growing people that were applying for unemployment benefits, and that the businesses could maintain some integrity of their business through at least the initial parts of the pandemic. So when they were in whatever phase applied to their particular type of business, they had the personnel in place that they could reopen to whatever level they were going to be allowed to reopen. But that's just one of the things. There were a number, and there still are a number of different programs available for farmers to have farm help on the farm. If you're a dairy farmer, there were programs that dairy farmers were particularly qualified for. There were food giveaway programs for farmers who might have been in a situation where in another part of the country where they were already some kind of a harvest season, they now had a product that they had no place to go to sell, but they could donate local food pantries, food kitchens, and thousands of food giveaway programs were pulled together because all of a sudden we had millions of people that didn't have the money to go buy groceries to feed their families. But we had farmers that had product that was rotting in the fields because they couldn't get it to market. So people, again, pulled together, thought outside the box, we were all walking on unbroken ground here, but everybody pulled together and just figured out a way to get 5 tons of potatoes in Idaho to a farm, to a food bank in California. I mean, look at your Facebook pages. I mean, I would see pallets of 50-pound bags of potatoes and onions and carrots and all of these staple products that farmers were growing this time of year, just being given away by 5, 10, 20, 50-pound bags to people who simply couldn't afford to go out and buy it, from farmers who simply didn't want to let their product rot in the field because the trucking system broke down or the stores were closed or whatever the reason was. And there was a lot of products that just got pulled together through the USDA, New York State Ag and Markets, other state level organizations like, I don't know what California calls their Ag and Markets department, but them. And then just individual food co-ops and communities. These are times where those grassroots organizations like the food co-ops and the farmers markets and stuff that happen in the little communities where thousands and millions of people live that nobody sees, that still have to eat every day. That's what creates the successes in these areas. But the state's trying, the federal government's trying, local governments, our county government is trying. I think we're far enough into this though that if it's really going to start to get scary, because in my life, 2020 is the year that we all have to figure out how to survive. 2021 is the year we all have to figure out how we're going to pay for it. So now that's what's going to get really scary. And all these programs that people are putting together to give the producers and the farmers and the consumers the money they need just to survive, we're going to figure out where that came from and where that's going to come from in the future and how we're going to recover that so we can all get back on some kind of an even keel and move forward.
Real quick, I'll just say that I did take advantage of the payroll protection program, and I'm thankful for it. Although it was a rapidly changing program that nobody really had a whole lot of answers, in the moment. And I do wish it could have been structured a little bit differently. I didn't have the ability to take advantage of it in the way that I would have hoped, but it really was a godsend. Beyond that, the state and the federal government is going to have to take a good hard look at agriculture and hospitality over the next 12 to 18 months, or especially if the worst happens this fall, like we're all, the elephant that is in the room, what happens in the fall if this really hits again, like so many of you are in New York and we shutter restaurants again, or look what's happening in California or Florida, where restaurants that have just gotten the opportunity to open back up are shuttered again. The second shuttering will be more than many can handle, with or without a payroll protection program. And state and national governments are going to have to look at call it what you want, a bailout. Every industry is really going to be suffering, but hospitality and agriculture will be hit in some of the hardest ways. And I think that the whole dynamic is changing pretty dramatically. And the idea of a restaurant in, let's say, 2025, when hopefully this is all behind us, or at least we've learned to live with it, is going to be dramatically different than what it was in 2019. And I'm horrified to think about it, but optimistic enough to know that you have to think on your feet, and you can't expect the government to carry the burden alone. But as a whole, the industry as a whole, we're going to need help big time. Maybe not so much up here in central New York. Hopefully we'll weather the storm in a little bit different ways, but in major metropolitan areas like New York, Chicago, if we get a second wave, or if this gets worse before it gets better, hospitality and agriculture and entertainment are going to need tremendous help.
Thanks, Tim.
Steve, I think maybe we have time for one more question.
Well, sorry, I'm a, I'm a new Zoomer. I can't see them. Can you help me out, John?
Sure. Well, and there are a few questions here. One of them, Alice, I'll follow up with you separately about the food situation on the Hill. But I guess I will say that Bon Appetit, our college food service, does a pretty good job of connecting with local farms and providing local produce in their day-to-day operations. And they have signs around the dining halls specifying what farms things have come from. I wouldn't say it's as broad as it might be and as our local farmers might wish, but they do a pretty good job engaging there. And I thought maybe I'd put out an upbeat question to close things out with, which comes from John Schmidt. Any recipes for beets? Oh, Tim, you're muted.
I got one. Real simple. I've been pulling in the most wonderful beets this year from a great friend of mine and a really talented grower out near Syracuse, Dan Button at Gray Barn Farm, who's been growing some experimental seeds from row 7 seeds. And he's brought me the Badger Flame beet, which is, Jason, are you growing any of those?
No.
Have you heard of those?
I haven't.
So for some of our friends downstate here, Row 7 Seed Company is initiative of the Rockefeller Institute and some big money behind it with Dan Barber from Blue Hill. And they're growing some pretty remarkable stuff with a lot of help from Cornell. Anyway, one of the vegetables that I've got my hands on is the Badger Flame beet, and it really is a remarkable vegetable. And this, I think I've just figured out that the best, beets don't need a lot, but we've been salt roasting them. So we get some. You could use regular old kosher salt, but what you really want is like a good quality coarse salt. We're using a coarse salt byproduct from my friend David at Syracuse Salt Company. And we take the beetroot, cut the greens off. We rinse the dirt off, but that's about it. We don't do a thing to it. And we put it in a pan and pack it with salt. Really pack it all around it, no moisture or anything like that. And we roast it real slow at 300 degrees for about, depending on the size of the beetroot, about 3 to 4 hours. And then you remove it. You crack the shell of the salt away, which the salt just reeks of beets. And then you peel it and you treat it like any roasted beet. It's really a remarkable cooking method that seasons it a little bit from the outside in. Also doesn't allow any moisture to escape. It kind of keeps it in there in this little sort of kind of like a tandoori oven. It gets real hot in there, hotter than the actual ambient temperature of the oven. And it's just a remarkable way to roast a beet. And I am a beet fanatic, so I don't want to do much to it. Maybe a little bit of good olive oil or some butter and a splash of nice vinegar. And you need, if you got a good beet and you've got you've cooked it properly, you don't need to go much further.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Tim and Jason and Beth, for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and your hopes and your concerns. I wish everyone a good night. Feel free to forward me questions. I'm happy to continue the conversation with anyone and everyone. So good night, everyone.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much.
you,
Thanks,
everyone.
John.
Yep.
Thanks, John.